Hey there guys, me, Brian Malorian with another Real Talk. I did one a little while ago talking about racism and explaining it to gamers, lost some subscribers, lost some followers, and we're back again to try and do something else. But this is another one where it's on the same general topic, but it was just something where it's a different slant on it and something I different want to talk about. So this really has to go around with the statues and the statue toppling and destruction, and where it actually starts coming on to Lord Baden Powell. Now, for those who don't know, Lord Baden Powell is the creator of the Scouts movement and is really well known for that. I should also really preface this right now that I am a scouting leader. I have worked in beavers. I am currently active Cub Akela. I have been in a scouting leader position, but I'm not coming and saying this in the name of Scouts and Scouts Canada, right? Obviously I'm saying this as me, as Brian, and if you want to see what Scouts Canada and Scouts, general want to say about this topic, you can go to their website and you can find their stances there. But really where this comes into Lord Baden Powell is that even though he kind of set up this whole setup where the youth can come and they can learn the ways of taking care of themselves and living out in the wild and blah, 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 there were less good things about Lord Baden Powell. One of which being that accounts are that he was homophobic, and that another one that he had ties with, or more so, not ties, but had support and agreement with the Hitler Youth and what they were doing. Now, I don't have all the facts on that. I'm not an expert in that field, so I can't tell you yes or no this happened. But for the argument of this video, let's just assume that that is the case. That he 100% was homophobic and was 100% a believer in the Nazi Party and the Hitler Youth. And we'll just assume the worst and we'll use that for this here. Now, where this comes up then is, what do you do with Lord Baden Powell's statue? There's other ones where they were fighting for the Confederates and wanting to keep slavery, so those statues are coming down. But what about things like with Lord Baden Powell? And this is one that, of course, with me being a scouting leader and someone who's been part of Scouts since I was, a little kid in beavers myself and growing up through the system and all that, and then being a leader in it after, that I felt pretty passionate by, and I wanted to have some sort of response too. So now that I'm like 3 minutes into the video, now you can kind of understand where I'm coming from. Now, when it comes to me and when I'm hearing that people want to be taking down the statue of Lord Baden Powell, that just kind of like comes off as wrong, because to me, when I think of Lord Baden Powell, it's all of the good sides of it, right? It's all, well, look at all he did for trying to bring up the youth of the world and trying to spread it across, so it's not just like in the UK, it's coming over to the States, it's going to Canada and Africa and Europe and just everywhere, right? Spread across the world. It's a whole worldwide movement and does a lot of good things for a lot of youth. We could also sidetrack into some of the bad people out there where there's been some, inappropriate touching of children and stuff like that. Definitely some bad apples there as well. But again, we're not focusing on that. We're focusing more on Lord Baden Powell in this one here and what should be done with that legacy and really the focus of that legacy, the statues and things like that. Now, I think one of the things that we have to first really think about when we're talking about this is what side should we be really focused on, right? Because obviously I'm coming in here usually 100% focused on just all the great things that he did, and then others are right now zeroing in on these at least potential, and again we're assuming for this video right now, the bad things that he did, because we're making those assumptions for this argument. And I think one way that you want to right away approach this at is that you need to be considering both, right? There is no perfect or absolute evil person out there, right? Me, myself, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that say like, oh yeah, that Brian Malorian guy, he's a swell guy, he's great. I've done a lot of awful things, and there's a lot of things that I wish I could take back, and I'm sure that goes for everybody out there. But at the end of the day, what does that really mean? Well, I don't think anyone in the future is ever going to be making a statue of me and teaching about me. But when it comes to Lord Baden Powell, maybe it's something where we have to be keeping in mind both sides of this and teaching the full story, right? So maybe from now on, whenever I'm teaching these things to the youth, I should also be explaining that, well, he did this and this and this. However, there were these not so nice things as well, right? I mean, it's something where you don't want to be hiding it because then you're kind of part of the problem, right? You want to be sharing it. So maybe that can be part of it too. Another hard thing that I've been struggling with is just the idea of, are these people really a construct of their times? And then that makes me then have to challenge my thought when I think about those people that were the Confederate generals and leaders and things like that, where, how much blame can you put on someone that believed in slavery when that's a world that they were brought up in and that's where their beliefs are? And, it's one of those things where it makes it very clear, right? If you're someone that came into a belief system and then pushed it even farther, then that's bad. If you're a person that comes into a belief system and just said, like, well, that's what I've been taught, I'm going to go with that, how much can you blame them for it? And again, you don't want to just completely excuse these things either, right? They did bad things, and I'm sure in the future, the things that we're doing now, when we're reassessed, in 100 years or whatever, they'll be like, wow, those people in the 2000s, whoa, I can't believe they'd ever do something like that type thing, right? We should pull down all their statues. So I want to put a pin in that for a second to talk about the other part, which is that, we've been talking about them and what they did good and what they did bad, but that's just really the way that we'll be perceiving them, talking about them, but we also have to address this whole statue thing. And I think another big thing in my mind is that these statues are something that we have to think of what the purpose of them are. Now, on one side, I see them as, in a way, a piece of art. And that's why I'm actually doing this in my wife's craft room here in her art supplies. That was my loose tie-in for that. Plus, she has some pretty good light in here. But if I think back to the times where, think of ancient Egypt and how much was lost in there, that when one pharaoh came in, they get you to destroy the records of previous pharaohs, so many things lost to time because of how they were destroyed. And you can say that, it's not like we're going to be forgetting these things because we have all that knowledge in books and online and the internet, and that's great. But even just things like, the giant statue of Buddha that was destroyed. And that's something we can never get back now. We can see pictures. We always can read about what Buddhism is and what it really was and how it was, that's teachings and blah, blah, blah. But that piece of art, that monument, is now gone forever. And so there's that art aspect that I think we have to hold in mind. And so again, if we were looking at something like the Roman emperors, right? We don't go and destroy all of the statues of Caligula, even though Caligula did massively awful things, It's because there's that art piece with it. This is, ancient Greek style, even though it's in Rome type of artwork, and we want to preserve these things. And even though they did bad things, it's that art piece that we definitely want to see, and also have just kind of this view, so we can actually, when we're reading about this Caligula, we can look at the statue and have this kind of link in our mind that this is the person we're talking about type thing. So I think that's one thing we want to think about with statues, that statues can be something that is art that we want to preserve because of those art styles. It's also something that when we're learning and reading about them, it's something we can actually then more focus on. If you actually see a figure, something tangible, it makes it a lot more real in your head rather than just some, cartoon character that you might be reading about. But at the same time, these monuments usually also stand for something. So if you were to go somewhere and there was a statue of, let's just go to the extreme that everybody goes to Hitler or something like that, and it was like, hooray, Third Reich, hooray, master race type thing. Well, what that monument is standing for is something that we probably don't want to uphold. Now, of course, there's a lot of statues that we're talking about, and I'm sure that if you went to these certain statues for the people in the Confederacy, they weren't like, hooray, slavery, or something like that. These people did lots of other things too. And so as long as there's not a statue or a monument out there that is directly there to say, go something really bad, I don't really have a problem with it. And I think what we should be focusing on then, to maybe link this back to where we started, is the plaque and what's actually going with that statue. You know, a lot of times you go to a statue and you can read it and it'll say, this is so-and-so, and they did this, they lived from this time to that time, the end. And that's really the important piece, right? If I walk by and there was just a random statue of some person on a horse or some person with a funny hat, okay, it's strictly just art, off I go. As soon as there's that plaque on it, that's when there's more into it. I can get to there, I can read, oh, that's who this person is, that's what they did. And if we focus on that and focus on the plaque and what it's saying, you know, maybe then we can be bringing up more of this whole story idea, where maybe we should be bringing up and trying to teach that this is the good that they did, this is the bad that they did, and this statue is here to stand for this type thing, right? So if there's more of that understanding and more of that perception. So again, if we're looking and tying this back to the Lord Baden Powel, and that's the one that I really want to focus on here, you know, again, what is that monument and those statues really standing for? Well, they're standing for the birth of the scouting movement and what that really was. You know, it's not like, hooray, you know, homosexuality is wrong type thing, or hooray, let's support the Hitler Youth. You know, like, that's not really what those ever saying. You know, you can look into who the person was, and again, we're making those assumptions of this argument that that's also tied in when you're really getting deep into it, but that's not what it's really there to stand for. And I think then if you were to go to those plaques, you know, right now they're talking about this as Lord Baden Powell, founder of the scouting movement, and blah, 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 blah. You know, again, maybe we want to be having something in that then links you into the full story and who this person was. And again, just that idea that we don't want to hide it, right? If this monument is to stand here for scouting and the foundation of scouting, that's great, right? You know, if you had Lord Baden Powell and they're standing by another scout there, you know, you could also maybe say what their name was, or I don't know if you'd go really far into it. But again, that's the whole point. You don't really need to have the name of any other scouts with them. You don't need to have the background. The idea is, look, this is representing the scouting movement. And then it can be more so if we're saying this is Lord Baden Powell, the person. For more information, you can be going here if it's not already saying something like that there. Again, this might be coming across as a long video. I don't know how long this is going to go type thing. But I just really felt that I had to say something, because this is something where, you know, I think it was very easy for me. And this is something that I had to change in my own mind, that when it was like, okay, we want to tear down all of these Confederate general statues, you know, part of me didn't like that because of the art preservation and stuff like that. But when you focus on that negativity, it's like, yeah, they had it coming type thing. But of course, as always, when it hits closer to home, and then it was with Lord Baden Powell, it's like, well, wait a second, do I really fully support this? And again, I still had my reservations before, but this made me really then consider, like, well, okay, what exactly are these statues? What's really the importance here? What do we really need to get away from this? So again, there you have it. You know, if you really were more interested in this, you can go look out there. Of course, if you go to the scouting page, they're going to say that he didn't support these things and these things are not true. But again, this is not a video about whether these things are true or not. This is more so my stance on what I think about this whole idea of, you know, should we be tearing down statues, especially when it comes to someone like Lord Baden Powell, where there might, and I'm sure there are bad things in the closet for sure, but there are significant good things to be showing off as well. So it's an interesting topic. Of course, if you have any thoughts on this too, place it down below. I would love to continue that conversation. But again, just another fun real talk to throw out there. So thanks for watching. Bye.